Okay, so, we've been getting a lot of requests from you, our listeners, to dive into this lecture by Neville Goddard called Imagination, My Slave.
Yeah, it's been popping up everywhere lately.
Right. And, on the surface, the title itself is intriguing, right, Ford? But once you start digging into it, you realize there's this, well, almost radical idea at its core.
Yeah, totally.
And it's basically that what we typically think of as God is fundamentally no different from our own imagination.
Like literally the same thing.
Well, that's how Goddard puts it, yeah.
Yeah.
He even goes as far as to say, and I'm quoting him directly here, when I use the words Lord, God, Jehovah, Jesus Christ, I am imagination, to me they are synonymous and interchangeable.
Wow. Okay, so right off the bat, we're dealing with some pretty big concepts here.
Exactly. And that's why we're here, right?
Okay.
To unpack this, to explore what he actually means by this.
All right, so let's dive in.
So Goddard talks about imagination as this kind of deeper self.
Okay, a deeper self.
Yeah, something that's like fundamental to who we are, but also, and this is the really interesting part, it's a slave to our will.
So, like, it's powerful, but also under our control.
That's the duality he's getting at.
Mm.
He says, and I love this phrasing, that imagination waits upon us swiftly, impersonally, without any effort whatsoever.
Waiting for instructions, basically.
Right. Ready to conjure up images based on, get this, our current state of being.
Oh, interesting. So it's like whatever we're feeling, whether it's positive or, completely negative, our imagination is just churning out images that reflect that.
Exactly. So it's not selective. It's just this constant mirror of our inner landscape, you could say.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. Because then, if you follow that logic, Goddard's saying that the entire outer world we experience,
The world we see around us.
all of it, is actually a product of our imagining.
Wait, so like we're literally creating our reality.
Well, that's what he's suggesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And he really pushes us to, test it out. He even says, I ask you to test it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, discard it. But if there's evidence for it, does it really matter what the world thinks?
He's putting the ball in our court.
He is. It's about personal experience, right? Not just accepting some abstract concept.
I like that. Okay, so how does this actually play out in real life? Like, how do we go from this concept of imagination to actually seeing it work?
Well, Goddard gives us these really fascinating stories, anecdotes from people who have supposedly used these principles to see tangible results.
Give us an example.
All right. So there's this one story about a guy who was in this, well, pretty impossible situation. He had to produce a high-quality four-color magazine in just 2 weeks.
2 weeks? That's insane.
Right. And here's the kicker. He had zero content to start with.
No articles, no nothing.
Nothing. No editorial, no stories, literally starting from scratch.
Whoa, so the pressure must have been huge.
Oh, absolutely. His boss was freaking out,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy himself felt this, intense responsibility for the situation.
Yeah, I bet.
But instead of panicking, dwelling on the impossible task ahead.
Which would be the natural reaction, probably.
Right. He did something really interesting. He shifted his focus to the desired outcome.
Like the magazine being finished.
Yes. He imagined his boss holding the completed magazine, seeing the publication date, and, really feeling that sense of accomplishment.
So he was picturing it vividly.
Super vividly.
Yeah.
And here's the key. Goddard emphasizes this. Every time doubt crept in, which I'm sure it did a lot,
Oh, yeah, given the situation.
he immediately brought himself back to that one image.
Like a mental snapshot of success.
Exactly. It was like his anchor, his point of focus.
And what happened? Did it work?
Well, according to Goddard, things started falling into place almost effortlessly.
Effortlessly. Come on.
That's what he says. Stories and articles just materialized. The guy found himself writing with this renewed passion. And even people who weren't initially involved, like photographers, printers, mailers, they all stepped up, working like crazy to get it done.
So it's like the energy shifted and things started happening that wouldn't have otherwise.
Exactly. And the craziest part, the magazine wasn't just finished on time, it was actually mailed out a few days too early.
Oh, way.
And get this, when the boss finally saw it, his exact words were, the best issue that we have ever published.
That's exactly what the guy imagined.
I know, right? And Goddard even throws in this funny detail that the boss was like, why was it mailed so early? He couldn't believe they'd finished ahead of schedule.
Okay, that's wild. But, one story could be coincidence, right?
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
But Goddard doesn't stop there. He tells another story, this time about the same guy, but it involves a much more, well, mundane situation.
Okay, what happened?
It's about a pair of lost trousers, actually.
Lost trousers.
Yeah, pretty expensive ones, too. Apparently, the dry cleaner had misplaced them.
That's always a nightmare.
Right. His wife was calling the dry cleaner every day for 10 days straight.
Understandably.
And the dry cleaner had searched their entire place multiple times, but no luck.
So what did he do?
Well, he decided to try a different approach, put Goddard's principles to the test.
So he imagined finding his trousers.
Kinda, but he did something more specific. While he was driving, he vividly imagined the sensation of the fabric on his legs, between his fingers.
Like he was actually feeling them even though they weren't there.
Exactly. He fully immersed himself in that sensory experience.
And what happened?
The very next day, the dry cleaner called to say they'd found the trousers.
No way!
I know, right? And here's the thing. They were pinned to another pair of pants, ready for delivery. And this is after 3 complete searches of the entire plant.
So they were right there all along, but somehow nobody saw them until after he did that imaginative work.
That's the implication, yeah. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, okay. 2 for 2. What's the third story?
All right, this one's a bit more intricate. It involves a financial challenge.
Money problems. Everyone's favorite topic.
Right. So picture this.
Yeah.
It's the Christmas season, and this guy, feeling pretty affluent at the time, writes a bunch of checks.
Holiday shopping, I get it.
Exactly. But then he gets a call from his bank saying one of his checks bounced.
Oh.
Right. Insufficient funds. He's totally shocked, convinced it has to be a bank error.
That's what you'd think, yeah.
But when he checks his statement, he realizes he made this, huge miscalculation.
Wait, so it was his fault?
Sadly, yeah. And the worst part is his next paycheck is weeks away.
Talk about bad timing.
Right. Total financial crisis mode.
So what did he do? Imagine a winning lottery ticket.
He did something, more subtle than that. But this is where Goddard emphasizes a really crucial point. You need an imaginal act you can believe in.
An act you can believe in.
Yeah, it's not enough to just wish for something.
Right. You have to actually buy the ticket, so to speak.
Exactly. Goddard uses this great analogy. Imagination is like gathering the wood and kindling for a fire, but belief is the flame that actually makes it burn.
Okay, I see what he means.
So, in this case, the guy needed a solution he could truly believe in, something that resonated with him.
What did he come up with?
Get this. He simply assumed that God was bringing it to pass in the best way for everyone involved.
So not focusing on a specific solution, just trusting that things would work out.
Exactly. He went to sleep feeling this sense of trust and surrender, and he carried that feeling with him to the bank the next day.
And what happened at the bank?
It's pretty wild, actually. He goes to the teller, and they send him to a vice president, who then sends him to an assistant manager.
The runaround, classic.
Right. But then this assistant manager, after hearing his story, just tells him to forget it.
Forget it. Just like that.
Yep. He says everything will be taken care of until his next payday.
So unlimited credit.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow. Talk about a lucky break.
But it gets even better. 2 days later, the guy gets this totally unexpected bonus from his boss.
A bonus. Out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
Yeah.
And it's for almost 10 times the amount of the overdraft.
Oh, way.
And guess what a key reason for the bonus was?
The magazine.
The magazine. The outstanding work he'd done on it.
Okay, now that's just too perfect.
Right. And to top it all off, there's this little detail at the end. The guy goes back to the assistant manager to thank him.
Yeah.
And the manager's actually kind of sad because no more bounce checks had come through, so he felt like he hadn't really helped.
Meaning the bonus had already resolved everything before the bank's temporary credit even kicked in.
Exactly. Goddard ends this story with this powerful line. So I must tell you, imagining does create reality.
Okay, 3 for 3. Those are some pretty compelling stories.
Right. And they all point back to this idea that our imagination, especially when coupled with strong belief, can have a real impact on our lives.
All right, so we've heard the stories. Now let's go back to Goddard's main point.
Right. The whole God equals imagination thing.
Yes. He keeps saying, God, Lord, Jehovah, Jesus Christ, I am imagination.
And he's not being metaphorical here.
Right. For Goddard, this is about identity. He's saying that what we call God is actually the creative force within us, our own imaginative power.
So it's not about worshiping some external being. It's about recognizing this power within ourselves.
Exactly. And he goes on to describe imagination as the great creative power of the universe.
The source of everything.
Yeah, and he says it's least disguised in the form of productive fancy.
Productive fancy. So not just random daydreams.
Right. It's about having a clear vision, a focused intention.
Like the guy imagining his boss holding the finished magazine.
That's a great example. That was his productive fancy that set the whole creative process in motion.
And Goddard emphasizes that real change happens when we not only imagine the outcome, but also fully believe in it.
So, like, it's not enough to just wish for something. You have to actually feel it as if it's already real.
Yes. He says, established and within himself, imagined and believed. Without that inner conviction, there's no interest.
Interest.
Yeah, it's like an energetic pull towards the desired outcome. When we truly believe in something, it creates this momentum that draws it into our reality.
Okay, so if this God is really our own imagination, where do we find it?
Well, Goddard says we need to look beyond religious labels.
So it's not about specific religions or doctrines.
Right. He says different cultures use different names, but the essence is the same. Your own wonderful human imagination.
So it's accessible to everyone, regardless of their beliefs.
Exactly. And he believes that this imagination is constantly talking to us through our desires.
Our desires.
Yeah, like what we deeply long for, and also through our dreams and visions.
Those can be pretty insightful sometimes.
Right. Goddard sees them as messages from our deeper selves, offering clues about our connection to this creative power.
Okay, I'm starting to get a clearer picture of this.
Good. Now, there's one more thing I want to touch on about Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. I thought we were talking about imagination.
Well, remember Goddard's equation. He sees Jesus Christ as another representation of this deeper self, this same imaginative faculty.
So not a separate divine being.
Right. And here's the interesting part. He says this deeper self is like a slave to our desires, acting impartially, whether those desires are good or bad.
Meaning it doesn't judge, it just reflects.
Exactly. So our imagination will create both good and bad experiences, depending on what we're focusing on.
Which is why it's so important to be conscious of our desires and intentions.
Yes. If our imagination is constantly mirroring our inner world, we need to make sure we're cultivating the kind of inner landscape we want to see reflected in our lives.
Makes sense. And as we heard in that bounce check story, belief is crucial.
Absolutely. Anyone can imagine anything, but it's belief that gives those imaginings life.
It's like the spark that ignites the fire.
Exactly. The guy with the bounce check needed an imaginal act he could really believe in, and that's what made all the difference.
It makes you wonder, what are some areas in our own lives where we might be lacking that deep belief?
That's a great question for self-reflection, yeah. So, to bring it all back to Goddard's core message, he says, go to the end.
Go to the end.
Yeah, imagine your desired outcome as if it's already a done deal. Feel the satisfaction, experience it fully in your imagination right now.
Live in the end, so to speak.
Exactly. He believes that this is what sets the creative process in motion, that it draws everything necessary into our reality.
And he compares the world to a shadow cast by our imaginal activities.
Right. If we don't like the shadow, we shouldn't try to change it directly.
We have to change the source.
Yes. Change our inner state, our dominant imaginings.
So it's all about inner work.
That's the key takeaway, yeah. Goddard ends his lecture with this really powerful statement. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself.
Wow. So to sum it all up.
Yeah, to recap our deep dive into Neville Goddard's Imagination, My Slave.
The key takeaway is this. Our imagination is way more powerful than we think.
It's not just some random mental faculty.
It's the very source of creation.
And it's synonymous with what we traditionally call God.
Which means we all have access to this incredible power.
And by consciously using our imagination, coupled with unwavering belief,
we can actually shape our reality.
We can bring our desires to life.
It's about living in the end.
Feeling the wish fulfilled now.
And trusting that our imagination will take care of the how.
So, we encourage you, our listener, to really think about what this means for you.
How can you apply these principles to your own life?
What are you struggling with?
What are you dreaming of?
Start imagining the outcome you desire as if it's already real.
And see what happens.
This brings up a final question for you to ponder.
If your imagination really is this powerful,
what seemingly impossible thing could you start creating right now?
What's your best issue waiting to be published?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep imagining.
Until next time.
Yeah, see you then.
Bye.